Private investigators of Redditors who have employed private investigators. What are your best stories or most interesting findings? Miso had a stalker who would send him flowers. We would come out to our front garden to find notes or gifts. It was a secured area and once got a glassine envelope left at the front door with what appeared to be coke in it. I guess the reasoning for this was Miso is a musician and we all know how fricked up they are and all the drugs they do. Then crazy letters started getting sent to neighbors about how I was a murderer or thief, a prostitute. This went on for a couple of months. So we hired a guy who came highly recommended by our attorney. Boom, caught him. It turned out to be a married woman who had a bad crush on my husband. We didn't press charges, but we had the attorney scare the living crap out of her, and that was the end of it. I'm sure this wasn't the most difficult case he ever had, but he was so quick with the result. Mind blowing that her life was put back right so quickly. Woman I know had to get one as part of her divorce. The husband had been cheating, but in order to get infidelity as part of the divorce hearing there needed to be a witness that saw him go the other woman's house after 10 p.m. and there for at least an hour or something like that. She said the strangest thing was that the pie was like a 50-year-old woman that you would never guess was a pie. An old professor of mine had a wife who was a pie. She was about 5 feet tall, cute and plump, with grey hair, big cheeks, and a sweet smile. She looked like a sweet old lady who could be the best grandma ever. This is exactly why she was an amazing pie. No one ever saw her coming, if you know what I mean, lol. She could get in and out of buildings with the information she needed by chatting people up and getting them to spill the tea or even hand her copies documents needed. They should really make a movie about her. Not a pie, but have hired multiple of them for my job. I'm a work comp adjuster, so putting surveillance on people that you think may be faking it or not sticking within their restrictions is not unheard of. Not used nearly as much as you'd think, and you rarely, if ever, get the reports you'd imagine. The best ones you'd find would be people claiming they have terrible back injuries and unable to do anything, and then find them out doing manual yard labor or whatever. But the most interesting one was a guy who had an alleged shoulder injury. Every time he was about to be placed at MMI, maximum medical improvement, his alleged pain would increase substantially. The way he injured the shoulder was questionable, as he claimed it was from lifting a 5-number box. We put surveillance on him, but never found anything. Then randomly one day the Department of Insurance got an anonymous letter with pictures of this guy claiming he was doing home renovations and had pictures to prove it all. It looked like the work of a pie, but it was all anonymous and got so much more than what the professional did. Our guess was it was a pissed off co-worker of the claimant's, because this same claimant had a prior claim with an altercation with another co-worker. My uncle did this to his neighbor. He was on social security and was running a lawn care service out of his house. Even had a truck with his company name, which was literally Joe Dipshit's Lawn Care. Officially his brother owned it. My uncle hated this guy. He was super obnoxious and invited his white trash relatives over constantly to blow stuff up and shoot at stuff. Actually had hit my uncle's house with bullets multiple times. So he set up a security camera that accidentally pointed at this neighbor's driveway, and he got hours of footage of him loading and unloading 50-pound bags of fertilizer. My uncle then hired him to work on his lawn, where he had to move a concrete bad bath and get on a ladder to trim the trees. So not only did he have pictures of him doing that, but the idiot gave him an invoice. Guy got busted and now owes the feds a ton of money. He had to sell his truck and basically all his tools and is about to lose the house. Not a pie, but the subject of a pie. Thanks to you/horsefriend for this comment as a reminder. I know an investigator that dresses like a stereotypical pie with the long coat and fedora. His job is to investigate and verify that kids actually live in the county of the school that they are attending. I didn't realize this was a thing, but for most of my grade school/middle school tenure I lived in a different district than what I attended. All my siblings had attended this district ahead of me, and we always used my dad's company address as our bus pickup/drop off. Sometime around 8th grade we sold the shop and moved to yet another house/district, but had no intentions of moving schools, when one day I get called to the principal's office and notified that they received a tip and thus hired a pie to follow me home. They let me finish the semester, but then I switched to the proper district after that. Looking back, I have no idea why there was such a resistance to switching schools. Not a pie, but the subject of a pie. Thanks to you/horsefriend for this comment as a reminder. I know an investigator that dresses like a stereotypical pie with the long coat and fedora. His job is to investigate and verify that kids actually live in the county of the school that they are attending. I didn't realize this was a thing, but for most of my grade school/middle school tenure I lived in a different district than what I attended. All my siblings had attended this district ahead of me, and we always used my dad's company address as our bus pickup/drop off. Sometime around 8th grade we sold the shop and moved to yet another house/district, but had no intentions of moving schools when one day I get called to the principal's office and notified that they received a tip and thus hired a pie to follow me home. They let me finish the semester, but then I switched to the proper district after that. Looking back, I have no idea why there was such a resistance to switching schools. That's how I got to graduate from the nice school in my area. Summer after 9th grade got into a fight with mom, sent to live with stepdad, enrolled in the nice school. Sophomore year was fine, but junior year, second week of school got caught by the dean smoking pot across the street from the school. Didn't find the actual pot, but when he asked which parent to call, I chose my mom, because I didn't want to get in trouble with a mean old stepdad. He asked her address and of course she told him. Boom, next week I was in the shitty school 30 minutes away. Stuck out the first semester, but over Christmas vacation I got a friend and his mom to agree to let me use his address, re-enrolled myself in the good school, and graduated from there. At the 20-year reunion I saw the dean that had it out for me, old as fuck, but I told him all about my shenanigans and how I turned out just fine. He just laughed and shook his head. Not a pie, but have a short story about one. I live at the end of a cul-de-sac. From the edge of the circle there is a spillway that lets water drain out to the main street, which runs perpendicular to my house. No one parks on the main street because it is walled off to enter the complex. One day this dude pulls up in a black car, parks across the street from the spillway and just sits there for hours. Since this is not normal activity in the neighborhood, everyone is immediately suspicious. He eventually leaves after doing nothing but sitting in his car all day, so we all just forget about it until the next day he comes back and does the same damn thing. Someone finally called the cops and they came to suss out what he was up to. Turns out he was a pie casing someone in the complex. Cops told him to move it along, he was making the residents nervous. Dude was not very good at his job, since his arrival and subsequent non-activity only served to make him extremely conspicuous. 95% of my work is workers' comp or insurance related, so no following accused cheaters or anything like that. I'm in the background department, so I locate court records, as well as social media accounts. Some interesting stuff. You hear Reddit complain about guys getting prison time for a gram of weed on him. But I've had a subject who accidentally shot and killed his brother, and he got like a month in jail and 3 years probation for negligent discharge. The kicker was that he and his brother were in some other guy's front yard, planning on breaking in and killing him. But yep, just a negligent discharge for planning a murder, but accidentally killing his brother instead. I see a lot of that stuff. Guys that should be locked up, but are out roaming about, constantly committing more crimes. People with 5+ DUIs still out there getting slapped with probation and license suspension, as if that does anything. For social media, I sometimes find claimants are much more active than they claim to be. They claim to be disabled, but find CrossFit competitions they are competing in, marathons they are running, business they are running, while collecting workers' comp from their primary employer, etc. It's hard to prove fraud, so most of the times, these claims either get denied or settled out. I'm not a private investigator, but I know someone who was a junior detective apparently, as fiction as it sounds. The guy had been cheating on the wife with her brother, but she said she didn't have a brother at all, and grew up as an only child, so naturally, they were really curious to find out who this brother of hers was. When they questioned the husband, he said that the guy who claimed to be his wife's brother said that we've known each other for so long, and I grew up with her and all that jazz. At first they assumed it was probably a long lost brother or something, but then when the husband was asked to describe the guy, he described the wife's father. According to the wife, her father wasn't there during her wedding and was replaced with her uncle instead. I'm not sure if this was interesting, but I somehow found it fun. Company employs them quite often for higher-end background checks for VP and up positions. One guy was a Trojan horse employee. He was a good worker and had good ideas, but was not suited for management. He would come in and things would pick up for a time, but then would be given the chance to resign after a year or so later. Further digging showed that his management style was so hands-off that his employees simply stopped working. The another guy had the same name, birth date, and birth hospital as a man executed in Texas for the rape and murder of a 16-year-old. I work it, and I'm not supposed to know these things. However, the way in which these documents were submitted was always triggering the email spam prevention. So it had to verify these documents were safe. Oh, of course I read them.